I feel like I say this almost every single week, and saying like, oh, I'm so excited about this training kind of loses its luster. But sincerely, this is one of the most impactful skills that I personally have worked on over the last year. And the degree to which it has translated into success on my channel for the leads that are coming in, the overall growth of the company is enormous. So I really want you to not kind of sally by this and be like, actually, it's the editing, or actually, it's the idea, or actually, it's the thumbnail that's going to take my videos to the next level. There's a reason that, the best script writers in the movie industry continue to have the easiest pathway to the next gig because of their capacity to write compelling videos. And it is something that has transformed my channel. And I was reflecting on it today. And what I realized, we went through our November numbers. And as part of that, we updated our kind of overall numbers year over year. We have nearly 5x the views, and these are just long form. So there's no short form vertical videos in here. We took out all the short form. This is just long form views on the channel. We have nearly 5x the viewership. So that's that 318 to 1754 number transition, while producing 1/5 as many long form videos. And the reason we were able to produce a ton of long form videos last year was because they were unscripted. I was showing up, just ripping into the mic, walking out, and like, hey, hope that works. And we have taken a much more disciplined, focused approach. We've spent substantially more time writing our intros, substantially more time making sure that there is a density to the information that we're conveying, the clarity with which we're conveying those points through quality script writing. And that has allowed us to 1/5 the total output, while 5xing the overall views, which you actually multiply those together, is a 25x increase in efficacy. So that's something that I want for everyone here. I think that's completely accomplishable. And I hope that you have the same type of numbers, or candidly, I would love it if you all had better numbers than that to brag about when we go 23 versus 24 year over year here. So that's why it's important. And script writing is the number one difference. We could talk about thumbnails and titles and improving our production and publishing more SVVs as having an impact. All of those things were a positive net impact, but I would diagnose script writing as the number one piece. And Hannah affirms that in the chat here. Arguably the biggest thing that helped us level up the channel was leveling up our scripts. That's a full-throated endorsement of the importance of this, the centrality of it. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to spend some time on ideation. We're going to talk about how we outline. We're going to talk about the process of actually writing. We're going to talk about improving your writing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about copy work. And the somewhat frustrating point here is that truly great writing, truly excellent writing, which I have, maybe grasped 1 or 2 or 3 times in my life, is not something that is easily replicable. It's about showing up and continuing to do the work, honing the craft, becoming a better writer, and also staying within your, your zone of genius, or your, core competency, as we uncovered in the Know Your Audience training previously. But we're going to cover all that today, and I'm going to just make a really explicit here. This is primarily about long form video. So if you are someone primarily focused on short form vertical video, I would argue that everything here still applies, but in a somewhat, light, condensed version. Some of this would be excessive for producing a short form vertical video, but you could still take an 80-20 out of what we're going to talk about today and produce really high quality, really compelling short form video as well. This is our overall process for the video essays that we are currently producing, which is what our long form video videos look like. We spend time in ideation. We outline the best ideas that we come across. We then write out those ideas. We shoot it, we edit it, we revise those edits, we work through those edits to iterate on them, and then we finally publish. The only thing we're talking about today is the first 3 sections of that process. Everything after that, we will talk about in other trainings at other points in time. And it is really, really important that you spend adequate time on the idea first. If you remember back to Jake Thomas's training, all about titles and whatnot, when we think about this whole process, what a lot of people do is over-index on the editing and the revising part of the process, or they'll over-index on shooting. I just need 10,000 takes of this thing and we'll figure out what's good. And over time, we have allocated more and more time to the ideation and the writing of our videos, and that has led to the requisite increase in performance that I showed you earlier. So that is where we are going to start. And once again, there are numerous ways to go about ideating on the content that you're actually going to produce. The two places that we tend to start are two relatively inexpensive tools. The first is called 1 of 10. And if you remember back to the metrics training, every video upon being released to YouTube is given this score 1 out of 10, which is relative to the 10 most recent videos that you put out. How is this performing in overall views, watch time, engagement? How is it reaching an audience? And what 1 of 10 does is basically takes this big meta view over the entirety of YouTube, because all those views are public numbers, because these are public metrics, and says, here are the outliers. Here are the 1 of 10 videos in this category. Here are the 1 of 10 videos in this specific niche. Here are the 1 of 10 videos that use the word bacon in the title. And as you search, as you select for it, you can basically identify, hey, here are the outliers in these categories that either I can maybe build off of. I can do a better version because this is a competitor of mine. Someone else made a spatula video about green spatulas, and my green spatula video is going to outperform them. Or I can take from one arena and bring it over to mine. So if someone's talking about the the most effective marketing strategy for a lunch spot, maybe I'm saying with my breakfast spot, here's the most effective way to market your breakfast spot. And it's the same core idea reformatted to your specific domain of expertise. Creator Hooks works very similarly, but starts with the structure of the title as the core insight. So as opposed to just, hey, your data, these videos are outliers, Creator Hooks goes down to, hey, these are the formats of the titles that are particularly useful. This is Jake Thomas's tool. And the new feature within Creator Hooks is they'll actually then help you generate titles yourself in the specific niche that you're developing content for. We start with both of these for our ideation process, in addition to just broadly consuming content in our space. That's also a part of the process. Like, there's a human in the loop. It's not just purely, well, the database told me to do this, so I'm going to do it. It's not that dispassionate or disconnected. We need some degree of, rising your own soul and emotion into the content that you're making. I also would encourage you, if you're struggling with ideation and you missed the YouTube title workshop, to go back and just listen to Jake explain his process in much more detail, because he is genuinely world-class at it and has had an enormous impact on multiple channels, seeing their channels grow. So if you want more space on the ideation, go check out that training. It is in the classroom right now under the Elite Pre-Production section. But you can also use general search engine tools. And people also ask, in high search volumes around certain topics, to stimulate some ideas for the topics that you're going to make. Now, you have to recognize that when the search volume on a specific term is highly legible, and this is a tool that is, broadly available to the masses, Ahrefs, SEMrush, these are 30, 50, 100, 150 bucks a month. These are pretty darn accessible to the other marketers in the room. There's going to be an enormous amount of competition along those highest search volumes. And as we've shown you with past videos, a lot of our best videos are not blowing up because they are ranking high in search. They are blowing up because they are suggested videos. They are, the algorithm is basically saying, this is high quality, it has strong average view duration, and we think you'll like it because you watch something else. We are not reliant upon the search volume in order to get that overall traffic to our channel. But this is still a place where you can research, what are people actually searching for? Where is their attention going, and get some idea on that basis. And then the last part is your Dream 100 within the context of other channels that you aspire to emulate in some way, shape, or form. We've talked about John Coogan in the past. I use an example from him later in this training. But you go to these channels, you see what their outlier performers or what just their interesting video concepts. If you go to your favorite or one of these channels that you're trying to emulate, and then you find their worst performing video, that's probably not actually the genesis point of a great new idea for one of your videos. But you find their outliers, their best performing videos, and see where you can apply a similar model to a video to one of your topics. That is a tried and true method for compelling ideas. But you get the idea. And then you have to decide, what type of video is this? So am I producing a narrative? Am I producing a listicle? Am I producing an argument? I would argue that these are basically the three realms that we're going to play in as folks marketing businesses, as folks that are more on the infotainment side of the spectrum. We're not out here, doing stunts and pranks and other, kind of more entertainment centric content. These are the more standard forms, but even these could be applied to entertainment. So in the narrative space, there's four narratives that you really need to worry about. The first, most common, is a linear narrative. Think Huck Finn, think Harry Potter. It happens sequentially from beginning to end. Basically, every rom-com is a linear narrative. The exception would be The Time Traveler's Wife, which falls into the non-linear narrative space, where it goes past, present, future in some discombobulating order. You're not familiar with that specific rom-com. If you've ever picked up a Kurt Vonnegut novel, it's relatively likely to have this similar type of format, where you are basically taxed to track the time and place a little bit more intensely than a linear narrative. I would encourage everyone to start and mostly stick with a linear narrative. A parallel narrative also would require an enormous amount of investment. This is Game of Thrones. Think dozens of characters, dozens of locations, interweaving storylines and threads. Hard to predict, hard to track everyone. I don't know if you're me. I just basically recognize faces. I couldn't even tell you half of the names of the people in that show. But that is an example of a parallel narrative where we're tracking multiple people at once. And then finally, a circular narrative like The Wizard of Oz, where it ends up exactly where it began. And it's a question of whether or not you actually got anywhere. And really, my strong endorsement to you would just be to stick with a linear narrative for your initial script writing endeavors, if this is the style of video that you want to produce. This can be especially effective if you are telling the story of someone in your space, in your sector, whether that be a client that you helped, beginning, middle, end, or if you are trying to basically educate someone about, some leading luminary who, might also have used EOS to transform their business, then that serves as a basis for, well, I would like to transform my business like that. Who can help me? Oh yeah, this coach would be the perfect person to do so. So that's where a particular linear narrative can be really helpful in marketing one's business. And there's a pretty tried and true structure there. We need to set up the stakes. We need to set up what's going on here with some exposition. Who are the characters? What are they trying to do? What did they face? What was the conflict? How did the action rise? How did they handle the most climactic moment? Quick falling action and resolution to how everything plays out. This is something that is so ingrained in our psyche that it's basically found in every religious text, every major story that is passed on through generations, and should come relatively naturally if you work at it. But if you don't want to work at it, you can produce a listicle. And as Ali Abdaal, one of the most successful YouTubers around, says, almost anything can be a listicle. You could even argue that tutorials are a subgenre of listicle. If you think about it in terms of, here's the 7 steps to yada yada, it's kind of like a listicle in that you'd be saying, here's the 5 tools I use, or the 7 lessons that you learn when you do X, or the 3 ways to Y. This is the easiest starting point. It's a reason that BuzzFeed blew up. They were famous for the listicle, but it is a very consistently popular format within YouTube, and one that is very easy to get going because you can basically create the spaces. Hey, I think I'm going to create this list of 7. And then you're halfway through, you're like, actually, I only have 5. So it's going to be the list of 5. And we amend it down and we're still able to produce our video. It is a reliable tool. There are enormous channels that do basically nothing but listicles and have a ton of success. And that is a very, still straightforward sequential production when it comes to writing. And then finally, you can be making your argument. And I could even try to argue here that your argument will be a listicle, because I could say the 5 reasons why I'm right about my point, right? It could still kind of be a listicle, but there's also a way to basically just make a comprehensive argument in favor of your point of view. This is right, this is wrong, or here's my prediction. Here's why everyone will eventually throw out their old spatulas and replace them with mine. And that might be a little bit self-serving. I would creator hooks that title a little bit, but you're making a kind of comprehensive argument supporting your point as thoroughly as possible, acknowledging objections. This is, a style of writing that you were probably taught in grade school, how to actually put forth an argument. But you have key points. You have your ability to try to counter the objections that you think someone would have to your point of view. And that is another way to structure your piece of writing. So you have to get your idea. You have to know what type of idea it is, how we're actually structuring it. And then you need to start outlining it. And this is probably the part that should take the least amount of time. We just today released a video on James Dyson. I came up with a working title and an approximate outline for what the stages of this video were going to be. I think the whole outlining process maybe took me an hour, and that's because I was really trying to go in depth on the stuff that he did before starting Dyson that I needed to research a little bit more. But there's not a lot to this. You basically need the buckets where you can put the requisite information. And if we were going back to, that exposition, his early life and his outsider mindset, there's your exposition. Your conflict, your rising action is the ball barrow and his first company basically being stolen from him. And then the challenges that he had trying to get his innovative design of a vacuum off the ground. The climax is when he almost runs out of money and no one's buying his product. Falling action resolution is once the business catches on, how it expands and how he succeeds. So that is a classic linear narrative. It was pretty clear from the early stages that that's how we're going to tell the story of one's life. That's how most autobiographies are structured. And you're not alone in this. You can use AI tools. These are literal prompts that we put into ChatGPT. Looks like these days maybe Bard is going to surpass ChatGPT. I don't have any comment there from an AI expertise standpoint. But hey, you're an elite YouTube scriptwriter. You focus on narratives that are spoken on camera with pacing and impressive density of lessons and details. Let's pull from James Dyson's book Against the Odds, an autobiography of James Dyson. Let's leave out references to his philanthropy and focus on his business success and strategy. And what was produced was not the final version of that outline, but it took us from 0 to 1 relatively quickly and then could be iterated on to make this a pretty darn efficient process. Once you have that outline, you need to then go to your script. And this is the part where there is no simple recipe, just input A, output B, and you'll get spectacular result C. But I'm going to give you everything that I got to quickly iterate on the quality of my scripts. And hopefully would love to have some discussion here at the end as people have questions, or if you are writing scripts yourself, talk about your process as well. So one of the most important starting points is to just put the actual time on your calendar away to be writing your script. So this is literally from yesterday. I'm working on my video that's supposed to be out in January about Ray Dalio. This is really good new book about him that I'm, kind of recompiling into a video format. But setting the time aside on the schedule to attack specifically that script and blocking off, throwing the phone to the other side of the room, closing every other tab, minimizing distractions, I have found is step one to getting the furthest distance from a writing standpoint. The second thing you need to do, I can't find War of Art right now, but if you've not read War of Art, you have to read War of Art by Steven Pressfield in terms of just, slaying the demon, fighting the resistance to actually get your creative work completed. But the other thing that I have found is to try and be a flow writer versus a precision writer. So a precision writer is someone who's trying to perfectly engineer each word and basically can't get to sentence 3 because they keep going sentence 1 and tweak that, improve that, update that, push that, flex that. I use a flow method where once I have that outline, I just jump to the point in the outline that I am the most comfortable writing. So to go back to that Dyson example, I didn't start with his childhood. I went right to the ball barrel thing because I just researched it. I found it super interesting. I didn't realize there was a upgraded design to the conventional wheelbarrow and that James Dyson had invented it. So I just put everything I had found out about the ball barrow, how he needed to take outside investors, and how that eventually led to him losing control over his own company. And that started to flow into the fact that while he was manufacturing the ball barrow, he was dealing with dust in the manufacturing process. And it was the cyclones that were used in sawmills to pull all the dust out of the sawmill that inspired the bagless vacuum. And then I had movement to go there. And then I jumped from space to space into the parts of the script that were the easiest for me to write about at that point in time. I have probably 6 to 8 other scripts going on right now that I just have no flow for whatsoever. And I'm not pushing on them. I'm not saying these have to get completed because I just simply cannot get past go on the words that need to be written. But we have 2 more video essays coming out this month. that I was able to probably each of them write in less than 3 hours because of hitting a flow state, having the whole structure of the story already told, and having some conversations that preceded the actual writing that were basically almost like pre-writing for the actual writing time. I know that's I'm using the word writing and writing over and over again. It's not necessarily providing clarity, but if you're producing a video that's going to be an argument, it should be an argument that you've already made, right? So if I'm arguing to you why rock climbing is a silly sport, I've made that argument many times to anyone that will listen. And when it's time to finally formalize that into an actual piece of writing, I should have already clarified a lot of the thoughts. I should have already run the grooves in my thinking down some pathways that already will make up 80% of the script that's about to be written. And then I formalize that. I see where, I'm actually a little creaky here. I don't have as great of points. It is important to have grip strength. So maybe someone has a point there as to why rock climbing is a good sport. But actually there's like 8 other ways to improve your grip strength that are way cooler. So I worked through that, and now I'm 90% of the way there on my first draft. And I'm using the flow method to help also avoid writer's block. The other thing that I think is important to do as part of the writing process, particularly in the first version, is signposting. Because we need to remember that a confused audience is a bored audience. And signposting is basically, once we set the premise, we've talked about good intros before, here's what you can expect, here's what I'm about to argue, here's the list that I'm about to tell you, here's the story that I'm about to present to you. If I've suggested where we're going, or if it's a tutorial, by the end of this video, you'll know how to get your website live and functional on the internet, right? As I'm halfway there, I need to tell you, hey, we're halfway to getting your signpost live. Or hey, we've gone through 6 of the 12 items that everyone needs in their carry-on bag. Make sure you stick around to the end, because the 11th one has a really important meaning to me. And oh, by the way, guys, make sure you stick around to the end of this training, because we actually have a special giveaway for our members of the guild at the very end. That was a meta. I just did something meta. The next part that we need to consider is not necessarily the pace or the length, because another question that we get all the time is, how long should my video be? Or what's the optimal length of a video? Or what's the right structure? And that is not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it, and it's engineered during the writing process. You cannot go back and engineer this. If you have to go back and engineer, it is 5 to 10 times more difficult. But you can engineer in the writing process the rate of progress that we're making. The feeling when you watch those big stunt videos that Mr. Beast produced, or an exceptionally compelling video essay, or a really useful tutorial, is that you are making some form of consistent progress. I'm making consistent progress through the story. I'm making consistent progress towards figuring out how to do this thing that this tutorial is supposed to explain to me. And there's only 4 things that will drive progress in the context of your script writing. You either have to introduce new information, make progress towards the stated end goal, regress from the goal, so that's your conflict, your rising action, something getting in the way, or have a distinct change of emotion, right? Distinct change of emotion is probably less salient for our more information related content, but that's an example where like the heroes are on a journey and it's that long travel scene and they're in the wagon and they're halfway to the end destination, and someone reveals they had a really hard childhood and they had to face this intense emotional toil, and it makes you care about them a little bit more. It makes you lean in a little bit more. And not only you're collecting new information, but you're feeling this emotional tenor, this rigor to the characters that you're following on their respective journeys. So think about your video in terms of how consistently it's progressing, more so than, is it the optimal length? Is it the right length? Like the amount of people that have come in on discovery calls for us when we make videos for them at our agency, and they're like, so what do you think is the right length for a video like this? It's like, I don't have the answer to that. That'd be misserving you to say, like, you need to do a 3-minute informational video, but you need to do a 4-minute information. Like, that's not the point. It's how much new information are we progressing, and how much value does the listener perceive as they're getting that new information. So we get our first version done. We've used the flow method. We've been signposting along the way. We've been thinking about the rate of progress. At some point, you have to step away from it and send it to some form of a trusted confidant. If you've got a team, this could be, your marketing person or the person that, calls it like they see it. This could be a friend. This could be someone else in the space. And you can vary this. Like I've actually found that a lot of people have the time to quickly review a piece of writing. Don't send them, like we have one script that we did that was like 28 pages. I didn't send that to anyone. That was purely between me and the script writing partner that I was working with. Don't send that to people. They will resent you. But these relatively short ones, it can be a fun thing to read. It can be a little bit of change of pace. And you can also be super candid, like, hey, if you hate this, like, I'll just never ask you to do it again. I'll have no hard feelings about it. But be respectful and also have humility. It's really important that you create a space from a relationship standpoint. Like, look, I want you to tell me if you zone out at this point. Like, if you're halfway through this block of text and you start thinking about your grocery list, I need to know that so that I don't say that on camera, invest my time into the production and the editing, and then have people do that after I hit publish, right? So that's something that we want to be clear in communicating to the trusted confidant. And please just be respectful of their time too, as we're asking them to review this. But people, I have found that, like, I have a lot of friends that actually do this for me. Depending on the script, I'll like send it to the person who has some degree of domain expertise. And I find it to be really valuable the more people I send it to, and most of them have a fun time doing it, I would say. The other thing to do with your first draft is to put it into the Hemingway app. Now, if like Drew was on this call and he's trying to talk to lawyers, like the lawyers probably actually don't want to be sent something that's at a 5th grade reading level. They want to feel like they're actually, elevated in some way. They paid all that money for their friggin' law degree, right? They're like, I want to use it. But most of us out there want to burn as minimal calories as possible to comprehend something. And there's a lot of people that unfortunately just don't have the highest literacy rate, legibility rate on a piece of information that's being conveyed. So if you put something in there and like one thing flags as elevating it from like a grade 6 to a grade 9 reading level, you can rewrite one sentence and make it substantially more accessible. And particularly if early in the video, you're using that more exclusive, jargony, highfalutin language, and you bring it down, that will have an impact on your average view retention. And as we know, that's important for the video reaching more people. So later, Lynn. And so we want to be cognizant of that as we're doing the script writing and trying to incorporate that into our writing process as well, making sure that everything that we're putting in there is comprehensible for the people that are watching it. The second version. I love this quote. I think about this quote all the time. And it's been attributed to other people, but apparently the internet says it's Blaise Pascal. I have only made this letter longer because I have not had time to make it shorter. It takes time to distill something. It takes time to condense, to squeeze the fat out of it, to make, to say the same thing with one sentence that you previously said with 3. And your second version is where you really push for that. If you were in a flow for the first version, this is where you get to be a little bit more precise because you already have the bulk of the text there. You can have that push for precision that you didn't have on the first pass. There's an instance of literally Ernest Hemingway writing drunk, editing sober. So he'd get roaring drunk, he'd write long into the night, he'd wake up and be like, what did I actually write here? And actually consolidate it and condense it. I'm not recommending that necessarily for everyone here. If you try that, let me know. I'd love to hear a report back. But the second version is where you consolidate the thoughts, you simplify, you clarify, smooth out the rough edges, make it as digestible as possible. 2 versions could be plenty. I will sometimes go through more than 2 versions, but I'm not suggesting anyone do that on their first go. I'm already proposing a lot of additional work. This is enough to get you a substantial upgrade in your overall process. The other nice thing about having your script is that you can start to suggest B-roll in it. So this is an example of one of our scripts. August is someone that works on my team that, reviews every single script that I do. And he is finding B-roll that could be used at specific points in the video. And that will make your editor, or if you're the one editing it, their job substantially more effective and efficient. And it makes sure that when you're picturing saying something, and the thing you want to say is on screen, it makes when you picture yourself saying something that thing will actually be on screen. When you're going from your script to delivering the words, you need to trust your voice. So sometimes, even if we're writing for ourselves, we'll write something and then we'll read it and be like, that's not how I would actually say it though. Say it the way you would say it. The writing is flexible because you're the one writing. It's like you have some genius scriptwriter hiding in the corner, be like, no, you must say it this way. But even further, like you have to deliver it in a tone, in a style that is authentic. And so it's usually pretty straightforward to tweak a sentence here and there to put it into your authentic and real voice. So let's talk about how to write better. The big four easy wins. Well, the first is follow David Perell. David Perell is like a master of writing online. He has lots of advice there. You can follow him and learn a lot. He has a really good new podcast called How I Write that is literally like purely on this topic and you would receive value from. But the big kind of four things that you can do right off the bat are collect notes, have more discussions, both live and digital, publish publicly, and evaluate your writing through the personal, observational, and playful matrix. So the first is collecting notes. As soon as last week, we published one of our most successful videos ever. And as soon as we had this topic, I was then consolidating all these different resources, notes, guides, research documents, and I was dropping it all into this one document that was relevant to the thing that I was writing. And so as soon as you've gone through an ideation process, and you can have 18 different ideas that you're stewing on, give them a dedicated digital space that even if I'm not working on that video right now, I just saw this interesting interview about the topic, I'm going to drop it in there. I just listened to this cool thing. I just read this cool article, drop it in there. And then when it's actually time for me to start, I want to fight writer's block. Another thing that helps me fight writer's block, if I have 4 pieces of relevant research to kickstart my writing process. Give yourself a digital space to collect notes on the specific topic of the video that you're going to be writing. And then when it's time to actually start, you'll have a wind at your back. The next thing, discussions, live and digital. I could have put Hannah's face on here because I also talk with Hannah sometimes, but I didn't want to give her that shout out, that pleasure. These are two of my friends, Adam and John. We have conversations about YouTube videos on a regular basis. And they are kind of always just giving me feedback on like, yeah, that's not really that interesting. Oh, that's fascinating. Did you consider this? And you're basically, like I said, live playing out some of the points that you might even make in a video in the future with one of your friends. So literally, the first video that we're putting out in January is an argument in favor of the US banning TikTok. And to give you an actual timeline of events, I met with Adam on a Tuesday, and I just kind of, through conversation, gave a part of my argument as to why I thought that was wise. And he reflected back to me, that would be a good video. Like the point that you just made was pretty compelling and I haven't heard anywhere else. Interesting. I wrote the first version in a flow state that afternoon because of his inspiration. I had a little time on the calendar. And by the next week, it had been reviewed, it had been through our writing process, and we were shooting it. It's now shot, it's being edited, should be going up in early January. And that is purely from one quality live in-person discussion. I'd made the argument before, but it was the time that a lot of my kind of actual points in the argument consolidated. And that led to a video that I think will perform well. Our top video on our channel is about how Tata Group acquired Jaguar and Land Rover. That was from a comment. I didn't think of that video idea. That was this exact comment thread where someone talks about you can also do a video on how India revived Land Rover. That digital conversation was the jumping off point for the best performing long form video that we've ever done. So this is a wonderful resource, well worth it. And what's beautiful is I already have fun having the conversation with Adam, with John, but when I have that thing to then go back to and reallocate those efforts and leverage those efforts, it gets even more powerful. So strongly recommend that. The other thing you need to do is publish publicly. So I know some of us are publishing videos with regularity. I know some of us are kind of still, I don't want to say waiting on the sidelines, but in the process of ideating and getting the thing out there. There is no replacement for getting your stuff out publicly, because people will say, I disagree with your argument. They will say you missed this thing from your listicle. They will say that actually, I don't think that that's quite entirely true how you presented that narrative. and it will make your writing better because you will now have that little angel or devil on your shoulder, however you want to think about it, the next time you go back to the writer's table. And that will sharpen, it'll make you more mindful to the potential objections, the potential arguments against. It'll make you more detail oriented in your research, and that will make you a better writer. So if we're never publishing publicly, if it's all within our own brain, our own, little crawl space, it is not going to be as good a writing. So please publish yourself publicly and do it soon. Speed to implement, right? And the last part is really just a matrix that you can use to evaluate your own writing, because it can be hard to hold up a mirror and be like, am I actually any good at this writing thing? Personal is your willingness to reveal stuff about yourself. I still struggle with this, candidly. You would have a hard time finding many pictures of my family on the internet, maybe my spouse's Instagram, but like I'm not putting a lot of my personal stuff out there in that type of form. And I don't necessarily know that that's required in order to have an effective video and effective script, but being able to call upon parts of your own personal experience makes anything more relatable. The observational, I actually think about like the greatest stand-up comedians. There's stand-up comedians that just like make fun of people or, have this bent of, being crass or sophomoric. But the greatest stand-up comedians are making these observations about the world that, yeah, you laugh, but you're also like, I see things a little bit differently now. And playful is your ability to have a smile as you're writing the words. It's not that you're explicitly a jokester, that you are a comedian. It's that, oh, that was a little clever. Oh, that was a little fun the way I put that stuff together. Like, guys, when I was writing this presentation and I was like signposting, and that's when I'll mention that there's the big surprise at the end, the big reveal at the end. I had a little smile. I was like, oh, look at me have a little, meta move there. I don't know if anyone else appreciated it than Hannah though. So we'll see. But your ability to have those pieces consistently will increase the quality of your writing. And some people are really strong at one, terrible at the other. There's people that are great at they'll just tell you everything about themselves, but they have no observational element to any of the content they're producing. There's people that'll be super playful, but it's cloistered. There's no personal piece to it. I think if you have all three, you're an absolute tornado of excellent writing. And then the last part that's a little out there is copy work. So if anyone here follows Sam Parr, he has a course called Copy That, which is, based off this premise that many of the greatest copywriters, Ben Franklin himself, became better writers by literally rewriting someone else's writing. They would go and find the best piece of writing that they could find. I'm not saying you go rewrite like Moby Dick or something, but some great, a short Vonnegut story or some short story that you like, and literally rewrite it yourself. And by doing that, it forces you to process how someone could write something that you really enjoy. So what this is a relatively new thing, but I was inspired by the folks that do this for, sales copy and ad copy and other forms of writing. We are actually taking the transcripts of video essays that we like, that we want to emulate. I referenced John Coogan earlier being in the Dream 100. You can go to John Coogan's channel. You can pick a video like his TSMC video. If you scroll down in the description, there's a show transcript button. And then it literally gives you the transcript of what he said. And it's not perfect. Google has some typos and some spelling errors. But it's pretty darn good. And you can export this and then look at it and then rewrite it. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to rewrite the entire thing, but you can literally read the script that turned into a video essay or a tutorial or a listicle that you really admired. And from that basis, you'll then have a new standard for what your writing should look like when you produce your own listicle, narrative, argument, what have you. So that's like a little 202 extra work here. I hope that you guys found this valuable. Just do it. Just write a script. Just set the time aside, come up with the idea, and go and flow and get the script written. It is not easy. So many of these other things are easy, right? Mucking around in Photoshop for a little bit, coming up with a slightly better thumbnail than what you're used to. It feels good. It's like, oh, I did the thing. It's more vibrant colors. This is not the easy thing. I'll be honest. The other reason that it was impactful is because it's not the easy thing for me to do, for us to do, but it is the impactful thing. and it will level up everything else that you're doing. So write the scripts, put them together, submit them in the private community. We will read them and give you feedback. That's another crazy thing about this community. Like, we are at a scale where we can still read your scripts and give you feedback on them. I don't know if that's going to be possible when this is a group of 50, but it's possible right now. So leverage that and take your stuff to the next level in 2024. As a bonus, we are dropping $10,000 worth of scripts that we have paid for into Skool. Some members of my team didn't want me to do this. They thought this was reckless. But last year, we spent more than $10,000 hiring other professional YouTube script writers, people that do it full time, nothing else, that have written for people like Ali Abdaal, like John Coogan, like these other characters. We have taken the scripts that we bought from them and we have put them into the Elite pre and post-production section. So you will be able to see precisely the script that we used to produce a video. Some of these videos weren't really performant, and there are issues on other parts of our game as to why that occurred. But you will see the exact script that we used. And hopefully this will also help you to set a bar for what a good script looks like. Hopefully it gives you some ideas for the next video that you want to produce. And hopefully that you perceive the Video Guild as being well worth the value of your membership fee, because we're glad you're here. And we have a lot of exciting things coming in 2024 as well. Thank you for being here. Let me know if you have any questions.
No questions really, but comment I'm a writer by nature, and I would write, particularly when I was doing my first commercials. I would script them out, and I would begin to deliver them, and I would find that the flow, the rhythm, pace, whatever was off. So whatever was between my ears wasn't mirroring what was making a good script. So I learned an awful lot in rewriting the scripts on the fly. So in preparing for my own podcast now, I sometimes script them out, but it's mostly to solidify the idea. And then when I deliver them, I just deliver them more off the cuff, and it tends to go a little better. But now I'd like to go back and say, I'd really like to nail this down in the script to make sure it's great and I deliver it great, like that. So that's sort of the next thing. I've done a lot of writing, but not a lot of script writing. And since I do have a movie in mind, but I have a lot of practice to go before I even attempt something like that, because I'd be on the set and I'd be like, no, let's do it this way.
I was just going to say, I think that the thing that I have run into most often in writing my own scripts is instead of writing word for word what I'm going to say, what's most helpful for me is to do bullet points and outlines. And something like that is not super possible for these bigger video essays that we publish on the Aaron Watson channel, because there's so much heavy information that needs to be accurate. But if you're shooting a video that it's not super necessary to get all of these facts and figures correct, having the bullet points or an outline there is way more helpful for me personally, because I don't know about you, but when I write, and this might be just a habit from writing from school, but I think a lot of people tend to write a lot more flowery than they tend to speak. And so a lot of times if I'm reading a script that I wrote and I'm recording, I'd be like, I would never say the word usurp in real life. Why would I write it here?
Yeah. So, the problem is I would use usurp. So that's my issue. I would come up with that on the fly as when I've written it down, I do the opposite. So I hear you totally.
Yeah, but writing how you speak is most important when you're starting out, I think.
The other thing that I noticed was that when if I were to script it out word for word, which I have done in the past, it was largely because I was sort of scared of deviating from what I had written. But the other thing, the problem with that is that if you're not used to reading, then it sounds like you're reading. So, right? So you're like, arguably the biggest thing that helped us to level up the channel was leveling up our scripts, right? So I can say that in a way that sounds like I'm reading it, and I can say it in a way where it sounds like I'm just brilliant, right? So I used to work at an agency. It was Tasone Stevenson at the time. It turned into Hallmark. It was Robert L. Stevenson, I think. Company before that was many, many years ago. And I'll never forget going in and just listening to a professional voice actor, right, do the voiceovers for either these commercials or I did a 15-minute piece for I think it was at the time Southside Hospital or whatnot, and it was just amazing to hear someone coach, the person on the agency staff coach the voice talent to have them enunciate in certain ways and reread it again and try that. And there's just a little bit of a glitch between, it was like, and when I internalized that, it really made me very cognizant of just how subtle these little shifts can be when you're doing something live to script versus doing something that's a little bit more free floating and spontaneous that might add to it.
Just to kind of go back, tie that together. So you guys are saying for the video essays, obviously, I mean, they're like, 10, 15 minutes long. There's a ton of information and it makes total sense. But like, to Hannah's point though, do you feel like there is a middle ground in certain types of content where you're it's more bullet point style and you're not specifically reading, or like, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say if it's something where it cold and it is highly developed language that you're, like I think about the language I use in a sales pitch, then yeah, absolutely you can go without a script. Bullet points, if that's going to lead to a more natural delivery, to Chris's point, then that can also benefit you. But when I'm watching videos, particularly like I would say, like there's a certain type of video that I see on LinkedIn that like I would never even be recommended on YouTube because it's just not performing. It probably has atrocious average view duration, but I'm kind of watching it as like a study of like what's actually wrong here. Can I diagnose it and fix it? It is a lack of tightness to the key points, particularly the intro, right? So I said at the beginning, this is maybe a little bit overkill for say like a short form video. I now write every single opening hook for a short form video that I'm going to do. I then maybe riff sentence 2, 3, 4, retry it, do it on the fly, make sure I say it the way I want to say it. But I think that I have seen that a lot of folks, the intro's too long, it's unfocused, the key points that you want to make, it ends up being said in 1 minute and 20 seconds when it could have been said in 45 seconds. And viewers appreciate that time back. Viewers appreciate that focus. And so it's there's a self-awareness gap there with everyone that, yes, you can over-engineer it and try to write out every single point. But I would even say that if you wrote out the whole argument or you wrote out the whole listicle as a blog post and you're handwriting it, you're not AI writing it, handwriting it, then when you go to deliver it live, even if you're not saying word for word what you wrote in the blog post, because you actually put all those grooves in your head of the words that you might say as you wrote them out, you're going to be predisposed to getting those words out in a succinct, focused, compelling, persuasive manner.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've done it backwards actually before. I've just said the video and then I take that YouTube script and I throw it through ChatGPT and I use that as the blog post.
Yeah, and that's the easy way, right? That's the like, yeah, here we go, and like flip it. And so there's efficiency there. There's there's a value in the efficiency to you, but the value to the listener is like, wow, this person cut every single piece of fat off the meat here and just delivered me the filet.
Right, makes sense.
I found out Misha has like her team call the same time that we have these calls. So that's super inconvenient. So I appreciate you being on the call here, Mish. And I appreciate everyone else being on the call, not just Misha. I appreciate everyone being here.